Hello, friends, kind mothers, strangers, enemies. So, I'm thinking about some concepts related to our lives. What makes us the way we are, and how we interface with nature. So, let me read a little bit about what I was listening to today. Let's see if I can pull it up. Let's see if I can read it. Let's see. Okay, so I was reading from the Bhagavad Gita, and it talks about two divisions of everything, and yet you can't separate them. One of them is nature, and it's the Sanskrit is Prakriti, Prakriti, and I don't know if it's defined here, but in this verse 20, so this is chapter 13 of the Gita. So what I was reading today with a class that they have, the Theosophists have a class on Fridays. Thank God it's Friday. At 4 p.m. Florida time. It's at 1 p.m. Pacific time. Somebody starts it over in I'm not sure where exactly. It could be Portland or Washington State. Portland, Oregon, or Washington State somewhere. By a guy named Jonathan, and there's usually around 10 students of the Gita and of Theosophy. And so they were reading up verse 20, and usually the verses are short, and they read through it in translation, and they get through some verses in 20 minutes, or maybe less, 10 minutes, and they go on to the next verse. So they can get through 3 or 4 verses at a time, like in an hour. But this verse 20 and verse 21, they kept going over it because they were hung up on what Prakriti and Purusha mean. So here in verse 20, it mentions Prakriti and Purusha. Maybe, I don't know if it's the first time that it's mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita or what. It's supposed to come from Samkhya philosophy of Indian philosophy, like a sub-philosophy of Indian philosophy, or a school. I think there's 6 or 7 schools of Indian philosophy, and so the Samkhya talks about Prakriti and Purusha. So you could say that Prakriti is nature and Purusha is the spirit. It could be God, but it could also mean the individuals. In this case, in the Bhagavad Gita, it seems to be relating it to the individuals, because here's how it goes. Here's the Sanskrit. Karya karana kartri ve or twe hetu prakritir uchyate purusha sukha dukkha nam book tripte Hetur Uchiate. Wow, that's hard, and I imagine I made lots of mistakes. So so maybe it's better for you to go online, maybe on YouTube, and find the Gita or somewhere. It doesn't have to be YouTube. And there's websites that have the Bhagavad Gita, and they have each verse in English or whatever language, and then each verse is written out in Sanskrit, and then yes, in a Roman script, but also in the Devanagari script, and then you can also listen to it chanted by a professional. What would you call it? Acharya, priest, acolyte, whatever, of the Brahmin caste, I believe you'd call it. Is well versed in the Gita and in pronouncing the Sanskrit that goes with it. So you could maybe check up on how it's pronounced there. But for now, let's read it in one translation of it would be, so there's two translations given here. The one in a dark blue, bold blue maybe, or is it black? And the other one is in a bold blue, yes. I'm not sure who translated this Gita. Maybe the first one might be the oldest, and the second one might be the version by a theosophist. I forget his name. But okay, here's how it got translated. Nature, Prakriti, is called the cause of the act, the agent and the instrumental agency. The spirit, Purusha, is deemed the cause of the experiencing of pleasure and pain, joy and sorrow. I don't know what that number 509 means, but what I just read is one interpretation of verse 20, chapter 13 of the Gita, and an alternative interpretation is as follows. Nature, or Prakriti, is said to be that which operates in producing cause and effect in actions. Individual spirit, or Purusha, is said to be the cause of experiencing pain and pleasure. Okay, so the top, I think, is it right? So there's footnotes, I guess. Okay, there's footnotes referring to the second interpretation or translation. So the first footnote is an asterisk, which refers to the definition of Prakriti given in the Gita. Maybe there's an extra explanation. So Prakriti, matter or nature, is the cause of all action throughout the universe, as it is the basis by which action may take place, and herein are included all actions, whether of men, of gods, powers, or whatnot. And then the second part of that verse, which talks about Purusha, then the footnote, I guess, tries to do the same thing, but for Purusha, it tries to expand on it or clarify what Purusha is. Purusha is the aspect of the individual spirit in every human breast. It is the cause of our experiencing pain and pleasure through the connection with nature found in the body. And then Francis Bacon in red said something that they found interesting that maybe relates to this. Francis Bacon says, nature is often hidden, sometimes overcome, seldom extinguished. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so there's another, so that was verse 20. Yeah? Yeah. Then there's verse 21. It continues maybe expanding on these concepts. It says, the spirit, Purusha, abiding in nature, Prakriti, indeed experiences the qualities born of nature. Attachment to the qualities is the cause of its birth in good and evil wombs. And then below that in blue is an alternate interpretation of verse 20. It goes like this. For spirit, when invested with matter or Prakriti, experienceth the qualities which proceed from Prakriti. It connects with these qualities. No, its connection with these qualities is the cause of its rebirth in good and evil wombs. And then there's a footnote. Here, Purusha is the persisting individuality which connects all reincarnations, as if it were the thread, and has hence been called the thread soul. And then there's a red parallel thought by a Vedantin, a famous scholar and yogi and master who wrote books explaining these concepts and maybe commenting on the Bhagavad Gita and other books. His name is Shankaracharya. Shankar is his name, and then Acharya is his title as being well educated and a master of these topics. What century was he in? I forget. I'd say 13th. No, maybe earlier. I don't know. Maybe later. I don't know. I could be off several centuries, but it's in there somewhere. Okay. So Shankaracharya said, the thought of I, in quotes, in what is not the self brings the spirit into bondage. The thought of I in what is not the self brings the spirit into bondage. So, see, I guess that's all I have. Yeah. So, verse 20 and 21 of chapter 13 of the Gita. Maybe what I will do is create a video of this and put the writings up in the video so that you can read it. So enjoy. If I get around to it, if it becomes a reality, I hope you enjoy this video. If ever I create it, I'm just doing the audio right now. I'm gonna make a video out of it and upload it to Wake Up and Think Clearly channel on YouTube. So, I also wanted to listen a little bit of what a scientist who attempted to connect the modern physics discoveries with the ancient I don't know if it's discoveries with the ancient systems of thought from India, primarily Hinduism and Buddhism, and Taoism too. China, yeah. So his name is Fritjof Capra. He wrote a book, The Tao of Physics, and so maybe what I'm going to play. I think it's the second or third chapter. I'm gonna play maybe 3 or 4 minutes of it, and see if what I play relates to what I was studying. But it's going to be talking about mostly physics, and then but it may get around to connecting it to Taoism, Hinduism, or Buddhism. Let's see if he does. Here it goes.
Eastern mysticism has developed several different ways of dealing with the paradoxical aspects of reality. Whereas they are bypassed in Hinduism through the use of mythical language, Buddhism and Taoism tend to emphasize the paradoxes rather than conceal them. The main Taoist scripture, Lao Tzu's Tao Te Ching, is written in an extremely puzzling, seemingly illogical style. It is full of intriguing contradictions, and its compact, powerful, and extremely poetic language is meant to arrest the reader's mind and throw it off its familiar tracks of logical reasoning. Zen Buddhists have a particular knack for making a virtue out of the inconsistencies arising from verbal communication. And with the koan system, they have developed a unique way of transmitting their teachings completely non-verbally.
Wow.
Koans are meant to make the student of Zen realize the limitations of logic and reasoning in the most dramatic way. The irrational wording and paradoxical content of these riddles makes it impossible to solve them by thinking. They are designed precisely to stop the thought process, and thus to make the student ready for the non-verbal experience of reality. Perhaps the best known of these is the classic, "You can make the sound of 2 hands clapping. Now what is the sound of 1 hand?" All these koans have more or less unique solutions, which a competent master recognizes immediately. Once the solution is found, the koan ceases to be paradoxical and becomes a profoundly meaningful statement made from the state of consciousness which it has helped to awaken. Here we find a striking parallel to the paradoxical situations which confronted physicists at the beginning of atomic physics. As in Zen, the truth was hidden in paradoxes that could not be solved by logical reasoning, but had to be understood in the terms of a new awareness, the awareness of the atomic reality. The teacher here, of course, was nature, who, like the Zen masters, does not provide any statements. She just provides the riddles. The solving of a koan demands a supreme effort of concentration and involvement from the student. In books about Zen, we read that the koan grips the student's heart and mind and creates a true mental impasse, a state of sustained tension in which the whole world becomes an enormous mass of doubt and questioning. The founders of quantum theory experienced exactly the same situation, described most vividly by Heisenberg. Quote, "I remember discussions with Bohr, which went through many hours till very late at night and ended almost in despair. And when, at the end of the discussion, I went alone for a walk in the neighboring park, I repeated to myself again and again the question, can nature possibly be so absurd as it seemed to us in these atomic experiments?" Unquote. Whenever the essential nature of things is analyzed by the intellect, it must seem absurd or paradoxical. This has always been recognized by the mystics, but has become a problem in science only very recently. For centuries, Scientists were searching for the fundamental laws of nature underlying the great variety of natural phenomena. These phenomena belong to the scientists' macroscopic environment, and thus to the realm of their sensory experience. Since the images and intellectual concepts of their language were abstracted from this very experience, they were sufficient and adequate to describe the natural phenomena. Questions about the essential nature of things were answered in classical physics by the Newtonian mechanistic model of the universe, which reduced all phenomena to the motions and interactions of hard, indestructible atoms. The properties of these atoms were abstracted from the macroscopic notion of billiard balls, and thus from sensory experience. Whether this notion could actually be applied to the world of atoms was not questioned. Indeed, it could not be investigated experimentally. In the 20th century, however, physicists were able to tackle the question about the ultimate nature of matter experimentally. With the help of a most sophisticated technology, they were able to probe deeper and deeper into nature, uncovering one layer of matter after the other in search for its ultimate building blocks. Thus, the existence of atoms was verified. Then their constituents were discovered, the nuclei and electrons. And finally, the components of the nucleus, the protons and neutrons, and many other subatomic particles. The delicate and complicated instruments of modern experimental physics penetrate deep into the submicroscopic world, into realms of nature far removed from our macroscopic environment, and make this world accessible to our senses. However, they can do so only through a chain of processes ending, for example, in the audible click of a Geiger counter, or in a dark spot on a photographic plate. What we see or hear are never the investigated phenomena themselves, but always their consequences. The atomic and subatomic world itself lies beyond our sensory perception.
This could go on quite a while. It's it's labeled chapter 3. Maybe it's chapter 2, because sometimes they are not synced properly in Audible. And it looks like this chapter, I'm not sure how long it was. Maybe it says 12 minutes, and I listened to 6 minutes and 23 seconds. So I hope you enjoyed this excerpt from the Tao of Physics to give you an idea of where this author is going and what's he trying to do in introducing Eastern philosophy and mysticism in conjunction with the Tao of Physics. And I don't know if it quite relates to what I was reading earlier in the Gita, but it could serve later as an introduction to those concepts. I'll see in the text version of the Tao of Physics. Maybe I have that in Kindle. Got the Tao of Physics, and I can search for Purusha. Let's see if he nope. Prakriti. Nope. So those concepts are not in there. Gita. Well, Gita is in there. Maybe, but only a few times. Maybe 5 or 6 times. The masses of the Indian people, however, have received the teachings of Hinduism not through the Upanishads, but through a large number of popular tales collected in huge epics, which are the basis of the vast and colorful Indian mythology. One of those epics, the Mahabharata, contains India's favorite religious text, the beautiful spiritual poem of the Bhagavad Gita. The Gita, as it's commonly called, it is a dialogue between the god Krishna and the warrior Arjuna, who is in great despair, being forced to combat his own kinsman in the great family war, which forms the main story of the Mahabharata. So Krishna is disguised as Arjuna's charioteer, drives the chariot right between the two armies, and in this dramatic setting of the battlefield, he starts to reveal to Arjuna the most profound truths of Hinduism. As the god speaks, the realistic background of the war between the two families soon fades away, and it becomes clear that the battle of Arjuna is the spiritual battle of man, the battle of the warrior in search of enlightenment. Krishna himself advises Arjuna in this way. In many ways, but in one way, this is an example of how Krishna advises Arjuna. Krishna says, "Kill, therefore, with the sword of wisdom the doubt born of ignorance that lies in thy heart. Be one in self-harmony in yoga, and arise, great warrior, arise." So the basis of Krishna's spiritual instruction, as of all Hinduism, is the idea that the multitude of things and events around us are but different manifestations of the same ultimate reality. This reality, called Brahman, is the unifying concept which gives Hinduism its essential monistic character in spite of the worship of numerous gods and goddesses. So Brahman, the ultimate reality, is understood as the soul or inner essence of all things. In that case, I could say that it is like Purusha. It is infinite and beyond all concepts. It cannot be comprehended by the intellect, nor can it be adequately described in words. Brahman, beginningless, supreme, beyond what is and beyond what is not. Incomprehensible is that supreme soul, unlimited, unborn, not to be reasoned about, unthinkable. Yet people want to talk about this reality, and the Hindu sages, with their characteristic penchant for myth, have pictured Brahman as divine and talk about it in mythological language. The various aspects of the divine have been given the names of the various gods worshipped by the Hindus, but the scriptures make it clear that all these gods are but reflections of the one ultimate reality. That people say, worship this god, worship that god, one after another. This is his, Brahman's, creation indeed, and he himself is all the gods. The manifestation of Brahman in the human soul is called Atman, and the idea that Atman and Brahman, the individual and the ultimate reality, are one, is the essence of the Upanishads. that which is the finest essence. This whole world has that as its soul. That is reality. That is Atman. That thou art. So the basic recurring theme in Hindu mythology is the creation of the world by the self-sacrifice of God's sacrifice, in the original sense of making sacred, whereby God becomes the world, which in the end becomes again God. This creative activity of the divine is called Lila or Lila. The play of God and the world is seen as the stage of the divine play. Like most of Hindu mythology, the myth of Leela has a strong magical flavor. So Brahman is the great magician who transforms himself into the world, and he performs this feat with his magic creative power, which is the original meaning of Maya in the Rig Veda. The word Maya, one of the most important terms in Indian philosophy, has changed its meaning over the centuries from the might or power of the divine actor and magician. It came to signify the psychological state of anybody under the spell of the magic play. As long as we confuse the myriad forms of the divine Leela with reality, without perceiving the unity of Brahman underlying all these forms, we are under the spell of Maya. Maya, therefore, does not mean that the world is an illusion, as it is often wrongly stated. The illusion merely lies in our point of view. If we think that the shapes and structures, things and events around us are realities of nature, instead of realizing that they are concepts of our measuring and categorizing minds, Maya is the illusion of taking these concepts for reality, of confusing the map with the territory. So, I could go on. It's very good stuff. I could go on. It's very good stuff. That was a portion of the Tao of Physics by Fritjof Capra. That's supposed to be around page 87 and 89. That's what I read, I believe. No, actually from 86 through 89. That's quite a bit. But I could go on, and it explains more and more. It talks about karma and other things. Liberation. And the Vishnu and the god Krishna of the Gita and all that. And Shiva. Okay, so and then it goes on to chapter 6, talks about Buddhism. So it's pretty similar, you could say, but Buddhism kind of tries to start from scratch, put Hindu concepts aside a little bit. Actually, he does use some Hindu concepts. Maybe he redefines them a little bit. We could learn about that some other time. But for now, let's cut this short. It's always short, even though it seems long and tedious. But we never get to wake up and think clearly with what we read or think about, because at least I am still pretty asleep. in my way of thinking. So I hope to wake up and think clearly gradually. Thank you very much. Let's see. Let me find the app where I can turn it off or stop the recording, the audio. So I recorded about 38 minutes and a half,